Hey everybody, I'm Chef Tom with atbbq.com, and today on Tips and Techniques, we're going to talk about how to make a basic brine. Well, this is a question we've been asked over the years. If I want to make my own brine at home, how would I do that? So today we're just going to dip our toes into those deep and salty waters of brining by preparing a basic brine and then talking about some flavors. Now, in its simplest terms, a brine is a saltwater solution. What happens when you submerge your meat into this saltwater solution is the salt starts to work on those proteins to open them up to the point where that meat can actually take on more liquid than it could before. So what happens is you suck in some of that salt, you get some flavor out of it, and that meat is now taking on more moisture. So once you grill it or smoke it or whatever you're doing with it, in the end, it's more juicy than it would have been had you not brined it. So the two things that every brine has to have is water and salt. Also very common though is sugar, and we'll be adding brown sugar to ours today. Beyond that, the world is your oyster. You can customize your brine in any way to fit whatever it is that you're cooking. For a poultry brine, I might use things like thyme, bay leaves, garlic, some red pepper flake or black peppercorns, and a reduced amount of sugar. Today we're making a brine that's more geared toward pork and barbecue, so I've got more sugar in the ratio. I've got some earthy stuff like these ancho chilies, again the pepper flakes, celery seed I love with barbecue, some cloves, and some garlic. But the really important thing when it comes to a brine is getting your ratios right, salt to water or sugar and salt to water. So that's what we're gonna go over now. Now, a pretty common recommendation is to do 1 tablespoon of salt for every quart of water. We're doing a gallon batch today, so that's gonna be 1 cup of salt. So that's fine if what you're using is the exact same salt that I'm using, but maybe you're not. Salt varies a lot when it comes to size and weight. A table salt's gonna weigh a lot more at 1 tablespoon than a kosher salt will. So weight is probably the best way to go about measuring out your brine if you're concerned about it being super accurate. I'm using 1.5 ounces of salt for every quart of water, which happens to come out to about 1/4 cup per quart. Now sugar is kind of up to you, and you don't really need sugar in a brine, but it is nice because it helps caramelization of the meat on the outside when you go to cook it. Brown sugar is great because it's got that molasses in it, but you can also use white sugar, you could use sugar in the raw. You have some options. Now, you might notice that this is not a gallon of water. That's because we're gonna do a little trick today. You have to have a cool brine to put meat into. You can't put your meat in it hot. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use half of my water now, and the other half will be in the form of ice so that I can instantly cool down the brine. So we're bringing this brine up to a boil, and the reason we're doing that is just for the flavors. All those flavors we added in there, we need those to open up and get sucked into that liquid, and the way to do that is to warm it up. If we're just doing a basic brine, and I'll show you right here, with sugar and salt and water, you can pretty much just do it at room temperature and whisk until everything's dissolved. Then you don't have to worry about cooling it down. All right, so we just need that to come to a boil. We don't have to let it sit there and simmer for too long. I'm just gonna show you the difference in appearance between these two now. Obviously, we've got that chili color going into this one, which made it quite a bit darker. All right, so we've got our 2 quarts of our brine prepared here. Since we're doing a gallon batch, we need 2 quarts worth of ice, which is just over 4 pounds of ice. So we're gonna go in the briner bucket with that, and then just pour our hot brine on top. And whisk. Yeah, so just a few ice cubes left in there. They're mostly all the way melted down, but that's fine. We want the liquid cold, and then you're ready to add your protein. Today we're doing pork chops, nice thick cut pork chops. And we'll let these go for about 1 hour. We'll lock that plate into place, close it up, and throw it in the fridge. Now, when it comes to how long you want to brine your foods, I follow a couple rules. Typically, if they're smaller pieces like chicken pieces or individual pork chops, that kind of thing, I'll just go for about 1 hour. When it comes to larger proteins, say like an entire pork loin or an entire chicken or an entire turkey, 1 hour per pound, however heavy that meat is. All right, so our pork chops are now brined. We're gonna pull them out of the liquid. And then one thing that's kind of a discussion in the world of brining is whether or not you should rinse your brine off your food. I definitely think in this case especially that we should rinse the brine off this food because this is a fairly small piece of meat. Remember that osmosis has happened where the salt water has been sucked into the meat, so we don't need it to be extra salty. I think it's best, especially for the amount of surface area, if you go ahead and rinse these off in some cool water. All right, so these are rinsed and dried off a bit here. Just gonna hit them with just a little bit of barbecue rub since that's the flavor we're going for. And we're gonna sear these off. Smells good. So after a little rest, we'll just check the internal here. See how that looks. That looks pretty juicy. It definitely firmed up a little bit from that brine as well. It changes that texture just a little. Let's check out the flavor. Oh yeah, super juicy. I mean, really important on top of the brine when you're cooking pork, make sure that you cook it to the proper finishing temperature. We stopped just shy of 140 on this today. That carryover cooking takes it a little bit further. That's that range where you're gonna get really juicy pork every time. And putting it in a brine like this just fortifies that. For sure, when I'm tasting this one, and you'd be surprised, but you pick up on that ancho a little bit. It's not spicy, but you get the earthiness of that ancho that was in that brine, as well as that touch of clove. And I think it goes really well with barbecue. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to check out atbbq.com for all of the products featured in today's video. If you enjoyed the video, hit that subscribe button. And if you have any questions or comments, or there's anything you'd like to see me cook, let me know in the comment section down below, and let's be good to one another. For more recipes, tips, and techniques, including the 3 brine recipes we did today, head over to atbbq.com/thesauce. All things barbecue, where barbecue legends are made.